Unexpected arrival. Dr. Jake Thompson's fingers danced across the quantum computer's holographic interface, his eyes darting between cascading streams of data. The young astrophysicist's disheveled appearance, uncombed brown hair, wrinkled lab coat, and dark circles under his eyes, betrayed the countless sleepless nights he'd spent perfecting his revolutionary quantum drive theory. "Come on, baby," Jake muttered, initiating the final sequence. "Show me what you've got." The laboratory hummed with energy as the experimental drive spun to life. Arcs of blue-white electricity crackled between spinning rings, growing in intensity until they formed a shimmering vortex at the center of the device. Jake's heart raced. This was it, the moment that would change humanity's understanding of the universe forever. He leaned closer, transfixed by the swirling energy. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red warning lights bathed the lab in an ominous glow. No, no, no. Jake frantically tried to stabilize the reaction, but the vortex expanded rapidly, engulfing him in a blinding flash of light. When Jake's vision cleared, he found himself sprawled on soft, purple grass beneath an alien sky. 2 moons hung low on the horizon, casting an ethereal glow across a landscape of crystalline trees and flowing streams that seemed to glow from within. Impossible, Jake breathed, struggling to his feet. His mind raced, trying to process what had happened. The drive hadn't just bent space, it had catapulted him across the galaxy. A rustling sound caught his attention. Jake turned to see a figure emerge from the crystalline forest. His jaw dropped. The being before him was undeniably alien, yet hauntingly beautiful. She, for the creature was unmistakably female, stood nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent lavender skin that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. Flowing silver hair framed a face with large, almond-shaped eyes that sparkled like polished amethysts. Her life form was adorned with intricate bioluminescent patterns that pulsed gently. Jake's scientific mind kicked into overdrive, cataloging the alien's features even as he stood rooted to the spot in awe. The being regarded him with equal fascination, her head tilted slightly as she studied this strange creature that had appeared in her world. Hello, Jake managed to stammer, raising a hand in what he hoped was a universal gesture of peace. "I come in peace." The alien's eyes widened at the sound of his voice. She took a step closer, reaching out a slender hand towards Jake. Her fingers were long and graceful, ending in slightly pointed tips that looked both delicate and potentially dangerous. Jake held his breath as the alien's hand approached his face. He flinched slightly as her cool fingers made contact with his cheek, tracing the contours of his features with gentle curiosity. Suddenly, the alien's eyes began to glow with an intense inner light. Jake felt a tingling sensation in his mind, as if invisible tendrils were probing his thoughts. Understanding dawned. She was attempting to communicate telepathically. Images and sensations flooded Jake's consciousness. He saw glimpses of a vast, technologically advanced city nestled within crystalline spires. He felt the alien's confusion and wonder at his appearance, tinged with an undercurrent of hope. As quickly as it began, the telepathic link faded. The alien stepped back, regarding Jake with newfound understanding. "Welcome, traveler from the stars," a melodious voice echoed in Jake's mind. "I am Zara, first guardian of Zarth. Your arrival was foretold in our ancient prophecies." Jake blinked, struggling to process this new development. Prophecies. I'm Dr. Jake Thompson. This is all a mistake. I'm a scientist from Earth, and my experiment went wrong. I need to find a way back home. Zara's expression softened with what looked like sympathy. "Earth, we have no knowledge of such a world in our star charts. You have traveled far beyond the realms known to us, Jake Thompson." A wave of dizziness washed over Jake as the full impact of his situation hit him. He was stranded on an alien world, possibly in another galaxy, with no clear way to return home. Zara placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Come, you must be brought before the council. Your arrival heralds great change for our people." As they walked towards the shimmering city in the distance, Jake's scientific curiosity began to override his initial shock. He peppered Zara with questions about her world, her species, and their technology. Zara answered patiently, explaining that her people, the Zarthians, were an all-female species. They reproduced through a complex process of genetic recombination, but a catastrophic event centuries ago had damaged their genetic diversity. Their population was slowly dwindling, with each generation becoming less viable than the last. "Our greatest scientists have searched for a solution," Zara said, her mental voice tinged with sadness. "But we lack the fresh genetic material needed to revitalize our species. That is why your arrival is so significant, Jake Thompson. You may be the key to our survival." Jake's mind reeled at the implications. He was no biologist, but he understood enough about genetics to grasp the potential impact of introducing human DNA into their gene pool. The ethical implications alone were staggering. As they approached the outskirts of the city, Jake saw more Zarthians emerging from crystalline structures. They regarded him with a mixture of awe, fear, and hope. He realized with a start that he was likely the first male being many of them had ever seen. The city itself was a marvel of organic architecture. Towering spires of living crystal pulsed with energy, connected by graceful bridges that seemed to defy gravity. Streams of luminescent liquid flowed through transparent conduits, powering advanced technology that Jake could scarcely comprehend. Zara led Jake to a grand central plaza, where a group of elderly Zarthians awaited them. Their silver hair had faded to white, and their once vibrant skin had dulled to a pale lavender. Yet, their eyes still burned with wisdom and authority. "Honored members of the council," Zara announced, her mental voice resonating with formal gravity. "I present to you Jake Thompson of Earth, the prophesied savior of our people." Jake shifted uncomfortably under the intense scrutiny of the council. "There's been a misunderstanding," he began. "I'm not a savior. I'm a scientist who made a mistake. I need to find a way back to my own world." The eldest council member stepped forward, her ancient eyes boring into Jake's soul. "The prophecies do not speak of willing saviors, young one. They speak only of necessity and sacrifice. The fate of our entire species now rests in your hands." As the weight of expectation settled on his shoulders, Jake realized that his greatest adventure and his greatest challenge was only beginning. He was a stranger in an alien world, thrust into a role he never asked for, with the future of an entire civilization hanging in the balance. Little did he know that this was only the first of many trials he would face on the distant world of Zarth. The true test of his humanity, his intelligence, and his heart was yet to come. Cultural clash. Jake Thompson's head spun as he tried to process the rapid-fire events of the past few hours. The council chamber, a vast amphitheater of living crystal, buzzed with the telepathic murmurs of hundreds of Zarthian observers. Their curious gazes made Jake acutely aware of his alien nature in this world of statuesque, lavender-skinned women. "You must understand," Jake Thompson of Earth, Ilara, the eldest council member, projected her thoughts clearly above the mental din. "Our civilization stands on the brink of extinction. Each generation, fewer of our children survive to adulthood. Those who do often lack the vitality of their ancestors." Jake nodded, his scientific mind already racing with possibilities. "I understand the concept of genetic bottlenecks, but surely there must be other solutions. What about genetic engineering or—" A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber, tinged with a hint of condescension. Zara, standing beside Jake, placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Our biotechnology far surpasses anything you might imagine, Jake. We have exhausted every avenue available to us." Jake bristled at the implication. Humanity might be centuries behind the Zarthians technologically, but human ingenuity had overcome seemingly insurmountable challenges before. "Then let me study your research. Maybe a fresh perspective." "Enough," Ilara's mental voice cut through the chamber like a whip crack. "The prophecy is clear. The Star Traveler will renew our bloodlines and usher in a new era for Zarth. You will be taken to the Genesis chamber to begin the process immediately." Panic surged through Jake. "Now wait just a minute. I haven't agreed to anything. You can't just." But his protests fell on deaf ears, or rather, minds closed to his unrefined telepathic emissions. Two tall Zarthian guards flanked Jake, their grip gentle but unyielding as they guided him from the council chamber. Zara hurried alongside them, her expression a mixture of sympathy and determination. "Please, Jake, try to understand. Every moment we delay puts our future at greater risk." Jake's mind raced, searching for a way out of this impossible situation. He was a scientist, not some breeding stock for an alien race. "Zara, listen to me. On Earth, we have ethical guidelines for a reason. You can't force someone to procreate against their will. It's wrong." The guards and Zara stopped abruptly, confusion evident on their faces. Zara tilted her head, studying Jake intently. "Force? Procreate? Jake, I don't understand. The Genesis chamber is a place of pure science. Your genetic material will be carefully extracted and integrated into our existing templates. There is no physical act involved." Relief washed over Jake, quickly followed by embarrassment at his misunderstanding. Of course, a species as advanced as the Zarthians wouldn't resort to such primitive methods. Still, the ethical implications remained troubling. I see," Jake stammered. "But still, shouldn't I have a say in how my genetic material is used? What about informed consent?" Zara's large, amethyst eyes softened. "Of course, Jake. We are not barbarians. You will be fully involved in the process, and nothing will be done without your understanding and agreement. The Council's urgency comes from genuine fear for our people's survival, not a desire to violate your autonomy." As they resumed their journey through the crystalline corridors, Jake's scientific curiosity began to override his initial fear. The technology required to integrate completely alien DNA into the Zarthian genome must be incredible. Despite the circumstances, he couldn't help but feel a thrill at the opportunity to study such advanced techniques. The Genesis chamber turned out to be a vast, dome-shaped structure at the heart of the city. Its walls pulsed with intricate patterns of bioluminescent energy, and the air hummed with power. Jake gasped as they entered, his eyes widening at the sight of massive holographic displays showing twisting strands of DNA and complex molecular structures. A team of Zarthian scientists greeted them, their excitement palpable even to Jake's untrained telepathic senses. The lead scientist, introduced as Dr. Lyra, began explaining the process in detail. "Your genetic structure is remarkably compatible with ours, Jake," Lyra projected, her mental voice filled with wonder. "It's as if your species evolved to complement our own. With careful splicing and gene activation, we can introduce tremendous diversity into our population without losing our essential Zarthian nature." As the explanation continued, Jake found himself drawn into the scientific discourse. He asked questions, offered insights from his knowledge of human genetics, and marveled at the advanced techniques the Zarthians employed. Hours passed in a blur of discovery and debate. It was only when Zara gently interrupted that Jake realized how much time had passed. "You must rest, Jake. There will be time for more discussion tomorrow." Reluctantly, Jake allowed himself to be led to a private chamber prepared for him. The room was beautiful, with walls that shimmered like mother-of-pearl and furniture that seemed to grow organically from the floor. A large window offered a breathtaking view of the alien cityscape. As Jake settled onto the strangely comfortable bed, the events of the day caught up with him. He was light years from home, surrounded by an alien civilization that viewed him as their salvation. The fate of an entire species might rest on his shoulders. Exhaustion overtook him, and Jake drifted into an uneasy sleep, filled with dreams of twisting DNA strands and shimmering lavender skin. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Jake divided his time between the Genesis chamber, where he worked alongside the Zarthian scientists, and cultural exchange sessions designed to help him understand his new home. He learned that Zarthian society was built on a complex system of merit and ability. Leadership roles were earned through demonstrated skill and wisdom, not inherited or seized through force. The lack of male influence for generations had shaped their culture in fascinating ways, emphasizing cooperation and consensus building over competition. But as Jake integrated more into Zarthian society, he began to notice undercurrents of tension. Not all Zarthians welcomed his presence or the changes it heralded. Some viewed the introduction of his genes as a corruption of their pure bloodlines. Others feared that his influence would disrupt their carefully balanced social order. Whispers of a resistance movement reached Jake's ears. A faction known as the Purists believed that salvation should come from within, not from an alien outsider. They saw Jake's presence as a threat to everything they held dear. One evening, as Jake walked through a less populated area of the city, he felt a sudden chill. The usual background hum of telepathic activity fell silent. He turned to see a group of Zarthians blocking his path, their expressions cold and hostile. "You don't belong here, Earthling," one of them projected, the mental voice sharp with disgust. "Your corrupt genes will be the death of us all." Jake raised his hands placatingly, acutely aware of how vulnerable he was. "Please, I'm only trying to help. If you have concerns, we can discuss them rationally." A wave of anger washed over him, nearly bringing him to his knees. The lead purist stepped forward, her eyes glowing with an intense inner light. "We will not allow you to destroy everything we are. Leave now or what, Mira?" Zara's voice cut through the tension as she rounded the corner, flanked by two guards. "You would threaten our honored guest, the savior foretold in our oldest prophecies." The purists faltered, clearly unprepared for Zara's arrival. With a final glare at Jake, they retreated into the shadows of the city. Zara rushed to Jake's side, her concern evident. "Are you all right? I'm so sorry, Jake. I never thought they would dare to confront you directly." Jake's heart raced, the adrenaline of the encounter still coursing through his veins. "I'm fine, Zara. But how widespread is this sentiment? Am I really making things worse by being here?" Zara's expression softened. "Change is never easy, Jake. Some feel what they don't understand. But many more of us see the hope you represent. You mustn't let the actions of a misguided few deter you from your purpose here." As they walked back to the safety of the central district, Jake's mind whirled with conflicting emotions. He had come to care deeply for the Zarthians and their struggle. The scientific breakthroughs they were achieving together could revolutionize genetics across the galaxy. But at what cost? Was he truly helping, or merely sowing the seeds of conflict in a once harmonious society? Jake gazed up at the alien moons, a wave of homesickness washing over him. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with scientific challenges and cultural minefields. But one thing was clear: his presence on Zarth had set in motion changes that could not be undone. For better or worse, the future of two species now intertwined in ways no one could have predicted. As he drifted off to sleep that night, Jake's last thoughts were of Earth, so impossibly far away, and of the incredible journey that lay ahead on this strange, beautiful world he now called home. Unlikely alliance. The shrill wail of alarms jolted Jake from a deep sleep. He bolted upright, momentarily disoriented by the pulsing red light that bathed his chamber. It took him a few seconds to remember where he was, not in his cozy apartment back on Earth, but in the alien city of Zarth. Before he could gather his thoughts, the door to his chamber burst open. Zara rushed in, her usual calm demeanor replaced by barely contained panic. "Jake, quickly, we must get you to safety," she projected, her mental voice tight with urgency. "What's happening?" Jake asked, hastily pulling on the iridescent Zarthian tunic he'd been given. Zara's expression was grim. "We're under attack. The Krellador have breached our outer defenses." Jake's mind raced. In his months on Zarth, he'd heard whispers of the Krellador, a warlike species that had been encroaching on Zarthian territory for generations. But the Zarthians' advanced technology had always kept them at bay, until now. As Zara led him through the crystalline corridors, Jake saw chaos unfolding. Zarthian civilians rushed to designated shelters while warriors, their bodies adorned with pulsing bioluminescent patterns, moved with purposeful grace towards the city's outer reaches. They reached a secure bunker deep beneath the city. The council was already there, their faces etched with worry as they monitored holographic displays showing the battle raging above. Alara, the head of the council, turned to Jake with a mixture of desperation and hope in her ancient eyes. The prophecy spoke not only of renewal, Jake Thompson, but of salvation in our darkest hour. We need your help. Jake's first instinct was to protest. He was an astrophysicist, not a military strategist. What could he possibly do against an alien invasion? But as he looked around at the faces of the Zarthians, beings he'd come to respect and care for, he knew he had to try. "Tell me everything about the Kreldor and your defenses," Jake said, stepping up to the holographic display. "Maybe there's something we're missing." For the next few hours, Jake immersed himself in understanding the situation. The Kreldor, it turned out, were a silicon-based life form, more machine than organic. They sought to assimilate worlds, converting all available resources into more of their kind. The Zarthians' energy-based weapons were effective, but couldn't penetrate the Kreldor's adaptive shielding fast enough. Each blast that failed to destroy a Kreldor unit only made their defenses stronger. As Jake absorbed the information, an idea began to form. He thought back to his work on the quantum drive that had brought him to Zarth in the first place. "What if," Jake began, excitement building in his voice, "instead of trying to overpower their shields, we destabilize the very fabric of space-time around them?" The Zarthian scientists looked at him in confusion. Jake quickly explained his theory, drawing on the holographic display to illustrate his points. By modifying the Zarthians' energy weapons to emit a specific quantum frequency, they could create localized areas of spatial instability. The Kreldor's shields would be useless against an attack that warped the very space they occupied. Dr. Lyra, the lead geneticist Jake had been working with, caught on quickly. "It's brilliant. But Jake, calibrating our weapons to produce such an effect would require incredibly precise calculations. The slightest error could tear apart our own forces." Jake nodded grimly. "I know. That's why I'll have to do it myself, on the front lines." A sharp silence fell over the room. Zara stepped forward, her eyes wide with concern. "Jake, no. It's too dangerous. We can't ask you to risk your life like this." But Jake had made up his mind. This was his chance to truly help the people who had taken him in, to prove that humanity's worth went beyond mere genetics. "You're not asking," he said firmly. "I'm volunteering." The next few hours were a blur of preparation. Jake worked feverishly with the Zarthian scientists to modify a portable energy cannon with his quantum frequency modulator. As he made the final adjustments, he couldn't help but marvel at how far he'd come. Months ago, he'd been a lonely astrophysicist tinkering in his lab on Earth. Now, he was Earth's unwitting ambassador, fighting to save an alien civilization. As Jake prepared to leave for the battle, Zara approached him. Without a word, she pressed her forehead to his, a gesture of deep respect and affection in Zarthian culture. Jake felt a flood of emotions wash over him through their telepathic connection: admiration, fear, hope, and something deeper that made his heart race. "Come back to us, Jake Thompson," Zara whispered aloud, her voice thick with emotion. Jake nodded, unable to trust his own voice. With a final look at the bunker full of Zarthians who had become his friends, his colleagues, his new family, he turned and made his way to the surface. The scene that greeted him was one of beautiful devastation. The crystalline spires of the Zarthian city glowed with an inner fire as energy weapons crisscrossed the sky. The Kreldor forces, sleek insectoid machines that moved with terrifying speed and precision, pressed in from all sides. Jake took a deep breath, hefting the modified energy cannon. He reached out with his mind, still unused to the telepathic abilities he'd been developing, and connected with the Zarthian defense network. In an instant, he could see the entire battlefield laid out before him, every Zarthian warrior and Kreldor unit represented by glowing points of light in his mind's eye. All units, Jake projected, hoping his mental voice was strong enough to reach the defenders, fall back to these coordinates. When I give the signal, hit the Kreldor with everything you've got. As the Zarthian forces regrouped, Jake moved to a vantage point overlooking the main Kreldor assault. His hands shook slightly as he aimed the cannon, knowing that the fate of an entire civilization might rest on this moment. Jake closed his eyes, reaching out with his mind to feel the quantum fluctuations around him. There, a weak point in the fabric of space-time, perfect for exploitation. He opened his eyes, took aim, and fired. A beam of shimmering energy erupted from the cannon, striking the lead Kreldor unit. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, reality itself seemed to ripple. The space around the Kreldor twisted and warped, tearing the machines apart at the quantum level. Now, Jake shouted both aloud and mentally. The Zarthian warriors unleashed a barrage of energy blasts, each one amplified by the spatial distortions Jake had created. Kreldor units fell by the dozens, unable to adapt to an attack that violated the very laws of physics they operated on. The tide of battle turned quickly. The Kreldor, for the first time facing an enemy they couldn't simply assimilate or outlast, began to retreat. Jake continued to fire his cannon, opening weak points in space for the Zarthians to exploit, until the last of the invaders fled back to their ships. As the final Kreldor transport disappeared into the star-filled sky, a cheer went up from the Zarthian forces. Jake sagged to his knees, exhausted but elated. They had done it. Against all odds, this unlikely alliance of human ingenuity and Zarthian technology had prevailed. Zara was the first to reach him, enveloping Jake in an embrace that conveyed more than words ever could. As other Zarthians gathered around, their minds radiating gratitude and awe, Jake felt a profound sense of belonging wash over him. In that moment, looking out over the battered but unbroken city of Zarth, Jake realized that his accidental journey across the stars had led him exactly where he needed to be. He had found not just a new home, but a place where he could make a real difference, a place where the unique combination of human creativity and determination could shine. As the first light of Zarth's twin suns peeped over the horizon, Jake knew that this victory was just the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, rebuilding the city, preparing for future Kreldor attacks, navigating the complex waters of Zarthian politics and his own growing feelings for Zara. But for now, basking in the glow of their shared triumph, Jake allowed himself to simply enjoy the moment. He had come to Zarth as an accidental visitor. Now he was its defender, its innovator, and perhaps its future. The journey ahead was uncertain, but Jake Thompson was ready to face it, not just for himself, but for the extraordinary alien civilization he now called home. The battle for Zarth. The months following the Kreldor attack were a whirlwind of activity for Jake and the Zarthians. The initial victory had bought them time, but everyone knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The Kreldor would return, and next time they would be prepared for Jake's quantum destabilization trick. Jake threw himself into his work, splitting his time between helping to rebuild the damaged sections of the city and collaborating with Zarthian scientists to develop new defensive technologies. His unique perspective as a human often led to innovative solutions that the Zarthians might never have considered on their own. One evening, as Jake pored over holographic schematics in his lab, Zara entered. Her presence always brought a flutter to Jake's heart, a feeling that had only grown stronger since the battle. "Jake," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder, "the Council requests your presence. Our long-range sensors have detected something troubling." Jake's stomach tightened as he followed Zara to the Council chambers. The faces of the assembled Zarthian leaders were grim, their usual serene glow dimmed with worry. Ilara gestured to a large holographic display dominating the center of the room. "See for yourself, Jake Thompson." The hologram showed a vast armada of Kreldor ships, far larger than anything they had faced before. At its center was a massive vessel easily 10 times the size of any other. By the stars, Jake breathed. How long do we have? 3 days, Elara replied, her mental voice heavy with the weight of impending doom. 3 days before they enter our system. We've already begun evacuating our outer colonies, but Zarth itself, she trailed off, the implications clear. There was nowhere left to run. Jake studied the hologram intently, his mind racing. The Kreldor fleet was indeed formidable, but something about its formation nagged at him. Can we get a closer look at that central ship? He asked. As the hologram zoomed in, Jake's suspicions were confirmed. The massive vessel was not just a warship. It was a mobile factory, constantly producing new Kreldor units and smaller ships. That's it, Jake exclaimed, excitement building in his voice. That's their weakness. If we can take out that central factory ship, the rest of the fleet will be cut off from reinforcements and resources. The council members exchanged skeptical glances. And how do you propose we do that? One of them asked. Our fleet is a fraction of their size. We'd never get close enough to launch an effective attack. Jake grinned, an idea taking shape in his mind. We don't need to get close. We just need to think bigger with our quantum destabilization technology. Over the next 3 days, Jake worked tirelessly alongside the Zarthian engineers and scientists. They converted their largest scientific vessel into a massive quantum projector capable of creating a temporospatial rift large enough to swallow the Kreldor factory ship whole. The plan was risky. The ship would need to get within range of the Kreldor fleet to deploy the weapon, and the power requirements were enormous. There was a very real chance that the rift could destabilize and destroy the Zarthian vessel as well. As the day of the battle dawned, Jake found himself on the bridge of the flagship of the Zarthian defense fleet. Zara stood beside him, her presence a comforting anchor amidst the tension. Are you sure about this, Jake? She asked, her mental voice tinged with concern. The council would understand if you chose to remain in the safety of the city. Jake shook his head, a wry smile on his lips. And miss out on the chance to save the world? Not a chance. Besides, he added, taking her hand, someone needs to make sure this crazy plan of mine actually works. As the Kreldor fleet emerged from hyperspace, the battle began in earnest. Zarthian ships darted and weaved through the enemy formation, their energy weapons blazing. Jake coordinated the defense from the flagship, his mind linked with the Zarthian battle network. The humans' unorthodox tactics repeatedly caught the Kreldor off guard. He used the crystalline rings of a nearby gas giant to set up ambushes, exploited the gravity wells of asteroids to slingshot Zarthian ships past enemy lines, and even managed to turn the Kreldor's adaptive shielding against them by tricking multiple units into a feedback loop. But despite these small victories, the sheer numbers of the Kreldor fleet were overwhelming. Zarthian ships fell one by one, their destruction marked by brilliant flashes against the backdrop of space. We're running out of time, Zara projected urgently. The quantum projector is almost in position, but our fleet can't hold out much longer. Jake nodded grimly. All ships, this is Jake, he broadcast across the Zarthian network. Fall back to defense pattern Omega. Let's give our secret weapon the opening it needs. As the Zarthian fleet regrouped, the massive scientific vessel moved into position. Jake held his breath as it powered up the quantum projector, arcs of energy dancing across its hull. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, space itself began to twist and warp around the Kreldor factory ship. A yawning chasm of swirling energy opened up, growing larger by the second. The Kreldor, their machine minds unable to comprehend the nature of the attack, tried to power through the rift. But the laws of physics themselves were unraveling around them. Jake watched in awe as the massive factory ship was torn apart, pieces of it vanishing into the swirling vortex of the temporospatial rift. With their central command and production facility gone, the remaining Kreldor ships fell into disarray. The tide of battle turned swiftly, with Zarthian forces mopping up the now disorganized enemy fleet. As the last of the Krellador ships were destroyed or driven off, a cheer went up across the Zarthian fleet. Jake sagged in his chair, the adrenaline of battle giving way to bone-deep exhaustion. Zara enveloped him in a tight embrace. "You did it, Jake," she whispered, her mental voice brimming with joy and relief. "You saved us all." Jake returned the embrace, allowing himself to bask in the moment of victory. But even as celebrations erupted across the fleet and back on Zarth, he knew that this was only the beginning. The Krellador threat had been neutralized for now, but the battle had revealed just how vulnerable the Zarthians were to outside threats. And Jake's quantum destabilization technology, while effective, had the potential to be catastrophically dangerous if misused. As the fleet began the journey home, Jake gazed out at the star-filled expanse. He had come to Zarth as a lost scientist, found a new home and purpose, and now stood as the savior of an entire civilization. The responsibility was enormous, but so were the possibilities. With Zara by his side and the gratitude of the Zarthian people behind him, Jake knew that his greatest challenges and greatest adventures still lay ahead. The battle for Zarth was won, but the quest to secure a lasting peace for his adopted home was just beginning. As the flagship entered Zarthian orbit, the twin suns of the alien world rising over its crystalline horizon, Jake allowed himself a moment of quiet pride. Humanity's spirit of innovation, adaptability, and determination had proven itself on a galactic stage. And he, Jake Thompson, once a lonely astrophysicist from Earth, had found his true calling among the stars. A new future. The celebrations following the defeat of the Krellador lasted for days. Jake found himself hailed as a hero, his name sung in the melodic, telepathic choruses of the Zarthians. But as the euphoria of victory faded, the reality of the challenges still facing Zarth came into sharp focus. Jake stood before the council, his posture straight, but his eyes heavy with the weight of responsibility. The recent battle had taken a toll on the already dwindling Zarthian population. The need for a solution to their genetic crisis was more pressing than ever. The Krellador are defeated, but at a great cost, Ilara, the head of the council, projected sullenly. "Our numbers have never been so few. Jake Thompson, you have saved us from extinction by invasion. Now, we must ask you to save us from extinction by attrition." Jake nodded, his mind already racing with possibilities. "I've been giving this a lot of thought," he began. "The work we've done integrating my DNA to your genetic templates has shown promise, but it's not enough. We need to think bigger." He waved his hand, activating a holographic display. Complex strands of DNA appeared, twisting and recombining in a mesmerizing dance. "What if," Jake continued, excitement building in his voice, "we don't just use my DNA as a band-aid? What if we use it as a key to unlock the full potential of Zarthian genetics?" Dr. Lyra, the chief geneticist, leaned forward, her eyes wide with interest. "Go on," she urged. Jake explained his theory. By using specific sequences from his human DNA as catalysts, they could reactivate dormant genes within the Zarthian genome. These genes, long silenced by generations of limited genetic diversity, could hold the key to revitalizing the species. "It's not without risks," Jake admitted. "We'd be triggering genetic expressions that haven't been seen in Zarthians for millennia. But I believe it's our best chance at not just survival, but a thriving future for your people." The council chambers erupted in a flurry of telepathic discussion. Jake could sense the mix of hope and apprehension rippling through the assembled Zarthians. Finally, Ilara raised her hand for silence. "Your proposal is bold, Jake Thompson," she projected. "But these are times that call for boldness. You have our approval to proceed." The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Jake worked tirelessly alongside Dr. Lyra and her team, pushing the boundaries of genetics in ways he had never imagined possible. The integration of his human DNA with Zarthian genetics proved to be a complex puzzle, but with each breakthrough, hope grew. One evening, as Jake pored over test results in the lab, Zara entered. She had been a constant presence throughout this process, offering support and insights that bridged Jake's human perspective with Zarthian knowledge. "Jake," she said softly, placing a hand on his shoulder, "you need to rest. You've been working for days straight." Jake sighed, rubbing his tired eyes. I know. It's just, we're so close. I can feel it." Zora's eyes sparkled with an emotion Jake couldn't quite place. "Come," she said, taking his hand. "There's something I want to show you." She led him through the crystalline corridors of the city to a section he had never visited before. As they entered a vast, domed chamber, Jake's breath caught in his throat. The room was filled with incubation pods, each containing a tiny, developing Zarthian infant. But these weren't like the sickly, struggling infants he had seen when he first arrived. These babies pulsed with vibrant energy, their tiny bodies already showing signs of the strength and vitality that had been lacking in recent generations. "It's working, Jake," Zara projected, her mental voice brimming with joy. "Your theories, your DNA, it's saving our people." Jake stood in awe, watching the rhythmic pulsing of the incubation pods. Each one represented a future he had helped create, a testament to what could be achieved when human ingenuity and determination combined with Zarthian wisdom and technology. As he turned to Zara, he saw tears glistening in her alien eyes. Without a word, she pulled him close, pressing her forehead to his in the intimate Zarthian gesture he had come to cherish. In that moment of connection, Jake felt a flood of emotions from Zara: gratitude, admiration, and something deeper, more powerful: love. The realization hit him like a thunderbolt. He had been so focused on his work, on saving the Zarthians, that he hadn't fully acknowledged the depth of his own feelings. But now, standing amidst the promise of new life, Jake knew that he had found more than just a new home on Zarth. He had found where he truly belonged. "Zara," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what to say." She smiled, a sight that still took his breath away. "Then don't say anything," she projected, her mental voice warm and inviting. "Just feel." As they stood there, surrounded by the future they had created together, Jake allowed himself to fully embrace the connection between them. Their minds intertwined in a dance of shared thoughts and emotions, human and Zarthian perspectives, blending into something entirely new and beautiful. In the days that followed, news of the successful genetic breakthroughs spread across Zarth. The mood of the entire planet shifted from one of cautious hope to jubilant optimism. Jake found himself at the center of it all, celebrated not just as a savior, but as a symbol of the bright future ahead. But with this success came new challenges. Some Zarthians, particularly among the purist faction, feared that the introduction of human DNA would fundamentally change their species. They argued for a more conservative approach, even if it meant a slower recovery. Jake knew that these concerns couldn't be ignored. He worked tirelessly to address them, holding public forums where he explained the science behind the process and emphasized that the goal was to enhance, not replace, Zarthian genetics. His openness and willingness to engage with even his harshest critics slowly began to win over many of the skeptics. Jake's human capacity for empathy and diplomacy, combined with the scientific rigor he had honed on Earth, proved to be powerful tools in navigating the complex waters of Zarthian politics. As the first generation of genetically revitalized Zarthians began to mature, the results were undeniable. These children were stronger, healthier, and displayed a diversity of traits that had been lost to the species for generations. Some even began to manifest abilities that had been thought extinct, like enhanced telepathy or the power to manipulate energy fields directly. One afternoon, as Jake watched a group of these children playing in one of the city's crystal gardens, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment wash over him. This was why he had become a scientist in the first place, to make a difference, to push the boundaries of what was possible. Zara joined him, intertwining her fingers with his in a gesture that had become comfortingly familiar. "What are you thinking?" she asked, both aloud and in the telepathic way that had become second nature to Jake. Jake smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "I'm thinking about the future," he replied. "Not just for Zarth, but for all of us. There's so much more we could do, so much potential to explore." Zara's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "What do you mean?" Jake's mind raced with possibilities. "Think about it. We've proven that the combination of human and Zarthian genetics can produce incredible results. What if we took that further? What if we reached out to other species, created a galactic exchange of knowledge and genetics? We could usher in a new era of cooperation and advancement for all sentient life." Zara's expression was a mixture of awe and amusement. "Always thinking big, aren't you, Jake Thompson?" Jake chuckled. "Well, someone once told me that the best adventures are the ones you don't plan. I'd say this qualifies." As they stood there, watching the future of Zarth play among the crystal formations, Jake felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything he had ever known. He had come to this alien world by accident, but he had found his true calling among the stars. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and opportunities he could scarcely imagine. But with Zara by his side, and the combined potential of humanity and Zarth to draw upon, Jake knew that they were ready to face whatever the universe had in store. The new future they had fought so hard for was just beginning, and Jake Thompson, once a lonely scientist from Earth, was ready to help shape it. The journey home. 5 years had passed since Jake Thompson's accidental arrival on Zarth. In that time, he had become more than just an honored guest or even a savior. He was now an integral part of Zarthian society, his human perspective blending seamlessly with their alien wisdom to create something entirely new and revolutionary. The fruits of their combined efforts were evident everywhere. The cities of Zarth pulsed with renewed vitality, their crystalline spires reaching ever higher into the alien sky. The first generation of genetically revitalized Zarthians was now entering adolescence, their unique abilities and vibrant health a testament to the success of Jake's work. But on this particular morning, as Jake stood on the balcony of his quarters overlooking the capital city, his mind was not on his achievements. His thoughts were turned towards Earth, the home he had left behind so long ago. Zara found him there, lost in contemplation. She didn't need to use her telepathic abilities to sense the conflict within him. "You're thinking about Earth again, aren't you?" she asked softly. Jake nodded, a sad smile playing on his lips. "I had a dream last night. I was back in my old lab, working on the quantum drive, but when I looked up, I saw the twin moons of Zarth in the sky." He turned to face Zara, his eyes filled with a mixture of longing and uncertainty. I think it might be time to try to go back." Zara's heart clenched at his words, but she had always known this day might come. "The Council has been expecting this," she said. "They've approved the resources to recreate your quantum drive. If that's truly what you want, we can begin preparations immediately." Jake's brow furrowed. "What I want? Zara, He trailed off, struggling to find the words to express the turmoil in his heart. Before he could continue, an urgent message came through on their communication devices. The Council was calling an emergency session. All senior advisors, including Jake and Zara, were to report immediately. As they hurried through the crystalline corridors, Jake's mind raced. What could be so urgent? Had the Krellador returned? Was there a problem with the genetic treatments? When they arrived at the council chambers, they found the room abuzz with excited tension. Elara, her ancient eyes gleaming with an energy Jake hadn't seen in years, gestured for silence. "Esteemed colleagues," she began, her mental voice resonating with barely contained excitement. "Our long-range sensors have detected something extraordinary. A ship of unknown design has entered our system, and it's broadcasting a message in English." Jake's heart leaped into his throat. English, but that would mean... Elara nodded, a smile spreading across her face. "Yes, Jake Thompson, it seems your people have found their way to us." The next few hours were a whirlwind of activity. As the Earthship drew closer, Jake worked feverishly with the Zarthian communications team to establish contact. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, a familiar voice crackled through the speakers. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth ship Horizon. We're on a mission to locate Dr. Jake Thompson. If anyone can hear this message, please respond." Jake's hands shook as he activated the comm link. This is Dr. Jake Thompson. I can't believe you found me." The joy and disbelief in Captain Chen's voice were palpable. "Dr. Thompson, thank God. When your quantum drive experiment went haywire, we feared the worst. It's taken us 5 years to replicate your work and follow your trail across the galaxy." As the initial shock wore off, Jake found himself torn between two worlds. The Horizon's arrival meant he had a chance to return to Earth, to share all he had learned and help humanity take its first real steps into the galactic community. But it also meant potentially leaving behind the life, the people, and the world he had come to love. The next few days were filled with diplomatic meetings as the Zarthian Council and the Earth delegation worked to establish formal relations. Jake found himself in the unique position of bridging two vastly different cultures, his understanding of both human and Zarthian perspectives proving invaluable. But even as he helped forge the beginnings of an interstellar alliance, the question of his own future loomed large. Would he return to Earth with the Horizon or remain on Zarth? On the eve of the Earth ship's scheduled departure, Jake stood once again on his balcony, watching the unfamiliar constellations of Zarth's night sky. Zara joined him, their hands intertwining automatically. "Have you made your decision?" she asked, her mental voice tinged with a mixture of love and resignation. Jake turned to her, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "I have," he said softly, "and it's the hardest choice I've ever had to make." He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "When I first arrived here, all I wanted was to find a way back to Earth. But now, Zarth has become my home in ways I never could have imagined. The work we've done together, the future we're building, it's more important than anything I could accomplish on Earth." Zara's eyes widened as she realized what he was saying. "You're staying." Jake nodded, a smile breaking through his tears. "I'm staying, but not just that. I want to propose something to both the Council and the Earth delegation. A true exchange program." He outlined his vision, a program that would bring human scientists, artists, and diplomats to Zarth, while sending Zarthians to Earth. It would be a two-way cultural and technological exchange that could benefit both worlds immeasurably. "We've seen what can happen when human ingenuity combines with Zarthian wisdom," Jake said, his voice growing passionate. "Imagine what we could accomplish on a larger scale. We could revolutionize science, medicine, art, push the boundaries of what both our species thought possible." Zara's face lit up with excitement. "It's brilliant, Jake. A true bridge between our worlds." The next morning, Jake presented his proposal to a joint session of the Zarthian Council and the Earth delegation. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Captain Chen, in particular, saw the potential for humanity to learn from the more advanced Zarthian civilization. As the details of the exchange program were hammered out, Jake felt a sense of peace settle over him. He had found his true purpose, not just as a scientist or a savior, but as a bridge between worlds. On the day the Horizon was set to depart, Jake stood with Zara in the spaceport, watching as the first group of Zarthian ambassadors prepared to board the Earth ship. Among them were some of the genetically revitalized youth, eager to explore the world of their human ancestors. Captain Chen approached Jake, a look of admiration on her face. "You know, when we set out to find you, I never imagined we'd be coming back with all this." She gestured to the bustling spaceport, where humans and Zarthians mingled freely. "You've changed the course of human history, Dr. Thompson." Jake smiled, squeezing Zara's hand. "We've changed the course of 2 histories, Captain, and we're just getting started." As the Horizon lifted off, carrying with it the seeds of a new era of interstellar cooperation, Jake felt a profound sense of rightness. His accidental journey across the stars had led him exactly where he needed to be. He turned to Zara, seeing in her eyes the same excitement for the future that he felt. "Ready for our next adventure?" he asked. Zara's mental voice resonated with love and anticipation. "Always, Jake Thompson, always." Together, they walked back into the gleaming city of Zarth, ready to face whatever challenges and wonders the universe had in store. The journey home, Jake realized, had never really been about returning to Earth. It had been about finding where he truly belonged, here, at the crossroads of two civilizations, helping to forge a future brighter than either could have imagined alone. As the twin suns of Zarth rose on a new day, Jake Thompson, once a lonely scientist from Earth, now a bridge between worlds, knew that his greatest adventure was just beginning.